Hello and welcome in. It's always college football. I'm your host, Greg McElroy. So happy to have you here with us. And I got to be honest, I can't recap what happened over the last 9 months. I just can't. Not in good conscience, because there's been too much. We've had Senate bills. We've had gambling situations. We've had drama with NFL players trying to come back and play college football. So yeah, the last 7-8 months has not been super fun. Y'all have stuck with us. Y'all have been here throughout. And for those of you that are joining us for the very first time because you just love ball, well, welcome. We're glad to have you with us. Go ahead and subscribe to the podcast wherever you get the podcast. You can also check us out on the ESPN College Football YouTube page. It was a wild offseason, very loud, was it not? We just named Indiana national champion. We just saw Lane Kiffin leave a playoff team. We saw James Franklin get fired. How many people thought that was going to happen, by the way, when last year started? So Saturday, the sport officially wakes up in Dublin, Ireland at noon Eastern, and it will go to sleep in Vegas about 12 hours later. And there's 8 games in between. There's only one team in the field that's ranked, and that's SC. But 5 of these 8 games are currently priced inside of 9 points. So it's intriguing. We know some of the people that will be paying attention today as well. But if you are new to Always College Football and you haven't checked us out, we do the best previews in the podcast landscape. Like a lot of people are like, oh, well, this quarterback and this running back, like they only hit the star players. Like we dive into the reasons why these outcomes are going to happen. That's why we've been more accurate from a game-by-game basis, and that's why I think you get more information when you listen to us on a game-by-game basis. So we appreciate you being here. We hope you give us a try on a full college football preview weekend because this is a small appetizer, but we'll kick things off with North Carolina and TCU from Aviva Stadium in Dublin, Ireland. $12 Eastern time on ESPN. TCU is currently a 7.5-point favorite. The total hovering around 47.5 or 48, depending on where you look. And now it's a rematch in Chapel Hill. It's a rematch that no one in Chapel Hill wanted. Let's just be real. Because this was Bill Belichick's first game as a college head coach. It was Monday night, Labor Day weekend, and TCU walked right into Keene Stadium and scored 48 unanswered points en route to a 48-14 win. That opened what was a 4-8 season in which North Carolina averaged less than 20 points a game, which is wild. This is a 6-time Super Bowl champion that just coached a very, very underwhelming first year at the college level. So Belichick did the most un-Belichick thing available to him. He fired his offensive coordinator, and he hired a guy in Bobby Petrino that has never been accused of leaving points on the field out of politeness, right? Now, across from them is the probably most quietly successful program in the Big 12. They've won 36 games in the last 4 years under Sonny Dykes. That's more than anyone else who's been in the league, and that's the whole time, by the way. And it was capped by an Alamo Bowl win last year against SC. Now, the quarterbacks are both new. Both teams are starting a quarterback who has never taken the snap for them. And by the way, welcome to college football in 2026. North Carolina named Billy Edwards their quarterback just last week. They said he's the experienced guy. He's what we want to go with. And at Maryland a couple years ago, he went for almost 3,000 yards. And now those reps were more meaningful. The real live game experience more meaningful than the potential upside you find in other spots in the room. TCU counters with Jaden Craig, who started last year at Harvard and was first team all Ivy League. And if you watch what it does on tape, it's pretty dang impressive. He's poised. He's quick with the football. He's comfortable working the middle of the field. He's a talented guy. So I actually think you're going to be surprised when you watch Jaden Craig for TCU this upcoming season. A lot of weapons for both sides. TCU's best offensive player, you can make the case, Jeremy Payne, who's a quality piece last year, averaged nearly 6 yards a pop. And he's pretty good catching the ball out of the backfield as well, too. You also have Jordan Dwyer as their top wide receiver. That's about 54 catches for 730 last year. And it sounds like this could be one of the better offensive lines that Sonny Dykes has had in his time there in Fort Worth. If you look at North Carolina weapons, they're a lot of imports, right? And the tight end room is the one that we're paying the closest attention to. They have length at that position. Jelani Thurman from Ohio State is 6'6". Jordan Washington from Texas, he's 6'6" or so. He's a big boy as well. You also have a 6'8" tight end in there as well. So you got a bunch of guys with length. So you got to anticipate 2 tight end sets being live from the very first snap. And I think that's exactly how Petrino wants it. And while this ordinary receiver room, it might be a little dangerous if you have to account a lot of resources to slowing down the tight ends. Now, you look at the trenches. And here's what people have backwards about last year's North Carolina team. The defense was not the problem. They were in the top 38 nationally. Not bad in total defense. And they were 25th in yards allowed per play. Now, the centerpiece is Melkart Abu-Jade, all right? And he is a guy that can do a lot, and he had double-digit sacks last year. And he was a preseason all-ACC defender and is a guy who they think has a chance to have some real upside. Now, the problem is that there's a lot of question marks around him because North Carolina doesn't return a lot of defensive snaps. They return just 32% of their defensive snaps in just 3 starters. That's 104th in the FBS. Now, TCU is the more settled group. Andy Avalos has most of his defensive line back. He has quality play in the back end led by Jamel Johnson, who's been playing a lot of football and had 5 picks in the Big 12 last year. One item first as far as injuries and one item as far as players being unavailable. There's also a coach unavailable, Steve Belichick, who is North Carolina's defensive coordinator. He's been on medical leave since the first week of August, and he remains out right now as of the game week press conference on Monday. So hopefully the group defensively for North Carolina will collectively come together, and hopefully we can see Steve Belichick back at some point here in the very near future. If you look at TCU, they did have to dismiss a projected starting safety in the middle of August for a violation of team rules. He was Jacob Fields. He was the co-Conference USA Defensive Player of the Year at Louisiana Tech and was one of their biggest portal additions. So that was big because they have to replace both safeties in the back end. Now, TCU's strength or continuity, the offensive line, the weaknesses are on a relatively rebuilt secondary that lost arguably their best new piece and a running back that is a little bit thin from a depth standpoint. So that's something worth watching there as well. But one of the biggest mismatches might be TCU's secondaries against North Carolina's rebuilt tight end room. So that's worth watching. So if the Tar Heels steal this game, that might be the paragraph that makes a difference. So the questions that will determine the outcome. Question 1, can Billy Edwards play negative play-free football on a neutral field? And Belichick stated this very publicly. So we can kind of hold the offense to it, right? Eliminate the negative plays. Now, Edwards has not played a ton of meaningful football in the last couple of years. His season ended after just 2 games at Wisconsin when things didn't go very quickly. I mean, he got hurt early in that season. So it's tough to tell, but he's got to play mistake-free, and that's why he was named the starter. Question number 2, can North Carolina's front get home against a quarterback that has not been tested at this level just yet? Now, Jaden Craig, he's never been hit by a power 4 defensive line. But Abu-Jade is a guy that can do it. I mean, his double-digit sacks by one Tar Heel, it means you got to account for him on every single snap. And the rest of the front is relatively new, which means pressure might have to be schemed rather than won. So if Craig is clean at halftime, then TCU should be in a pretty good spot. Question number 3. How much does the TCU secondary shuffle actually cost, right? Losing Jacob Fields 11 days before they are getting ready to play is not a depth chart footnote. I mean, he was a conference defensive player of the year and was one of the fixes to a group that already had a couple jobs open. So you got to see, like, how do they adjust? Do they account for the back end? Are they maybe a little less likely to blitz because they don't want to put that secondary on islands? That's worth watching as well. Question number 4, does Gordon Samus actually run it? Now, TCU brought in a new offensive coordinator this year. Their offensive coordinator, Ken O'Brien, took the job at South Carolina. And they averaged 131 rushing yards a game. They were second in the league in passing for the 3rd straight year, and that formula produced 9 quality wins last year. They didn't win any conference titles, though. So it'll be interesting to see how does this TCU offense adjust, because it's a new play caller, but the new play caller is a little different from the play calling philosophy that the head coach, Sonny Dykes, has had over the years. So will they slow it down? Do they run it more? Because if Payne gets 20 plus carries, that means that Sonny Dykes has really changed and really adjusts. But if Craig is dropping back, throwing it 40 times, then maybe nothing's really changed. It's just a different guy that's voicing the play call. Question number 5, who wins on first down? Is a game between 2 brand new offenses. And brand new offenses are not going to be a good spot if they're living on 2nd and 9 over and over and over again. So whichever team lives in 3rd and manageable and third and gettable, it's going to look wildly more competent than the other. And the gap will look bigger than maybe the talent gap actually is. Question number 6, can 4 new offensive linemen protect long enough for Bobby Petrino to be Bobby Petrino? Now, North Carolina had to replace 4 of their 5 starters up front. And TCU returns most of their defensive line, which is a pretty significant experience gap on the field in either direction. And offense can't really be aggressive if the quarterback is running for his life or if he's on the ground. And being aggressive is the entire reason why Bobby Petrino was hired. And then question number 7, what does Bobby Petrino's effect look like in game 1? Look, North Carolina finished last year 120th in the country in scoring. And Petrino offenses have historically not needed time to gel. So watch the first 3 drives. Check out the rhythm. Check out the tempo. If there's an improvement story and it's real in September, then we'll be able to see it pretty early. If it's a 3-and-out punt, 3-and-out, well, that means that it's looking a lot like the North Carolina of old. Now, I've said it on this show. I think North Carolina improves this year. I actually think they're going to be a better team under Bill Belichick in year 2. I'm not walking that back. I think Bobby Petrino is a real fix. I think Edwards at quarterback's a real upgrade. I do think the defense that's built around the ACC's leading sack man is not going to get run off the field. But better is different than beating TCU on a neutral field in opening week. Those are just different achievements. So I trust a veteran offensive line more than I trust anyone's week 1 secondary, right? So I'm going to take TCU to win the game 27-21. The Tar Heels will lose the game, but I think they might impress a few people in the process. Moving on to game number 2, it's NC State at Virginia. This is from Scott Stadium in Charlottesville, Virginia. Virginia right now about a 5.5-point favorite. This game is 3:30 Eastern time on ESPN. Now, Virginia's coming off maybe the best season in modern program history. They were 11-3. They were first place in the ACC regular season standings. Yes, they lost in overtime to Duke in the title game. And yes, the Gator Bowl was maybe not the prettiest game offensively we've ever seen, but still a top 16 finish in the AP poll is solid because Tony Elliott came in to that season last year, just 11-23 in his first 3 years. And then he won 11 games in just 1 year. So it's not a step forward. That's a program changing its zip code entirely, right? And he's spent all of August saying the phrase out loud that they have to learn how to handle success, which is coach speak for a very dangerous condition in the sport, right? You do not want to be complacent, that's for sure. Meanwhile, NC State went 8-5, and the entire offseason came down to a phone call that didn't happen. And it was CJ Bailey saying, yep, I'm not answering any phone calls. I'm going to stay. He's their quarterback. He told Dave Doran, don't worry about it. And then he actually started fielding calls from portal players who wanted to know about playing with him potentially. And he is a 6'6" player. He's his 3rd year as a starter. And he went for over 2,400 yards and 17 touchdowns as a freshman to 3,100 yards and 25 touchdowns last year and completed 69% of his passes. So he has done a really good job of taking a step from year 1 as a starter to year 2. Now I think the sky's the limit for CJ Bailey. Very encouraged by his development. Bo Pribula on the other side for Virginia started 10 games at Missouri, completed 67% of his passes, didn't quite get to 2,000 yards, and had just 11 touchdowns against 9 interceptions. He is a pretty mobile option, though. He had nearly 300 rushing yards, but there was a moment where the Tigers last year were 6-1, and then he dislocated his left ankle against Vanderbilt in late October, and they weren't quite the same. Now, here's why the fit kind of beats the raw numbers, because you'd look at just what the offense is going to look like. There's going to be a heavy inside zone presence, and the quarterback needs to be able to see the field, right? It needs to protect the ball, it needs to carry it 8 to 10 times or so. And Virginia has done, I think, a pretty good job of bringing this thing along. I think Pribula is capable, that's for sure, but NC State does have a quarterback advantage. Now, the weapons is that the NC State's problem is that their top 5 pass catchers from last year are all gone. Justin Jolie went to the NFL, Wesley Grimes signed with San Fran, and you have a tremendous back in Hollywood Smothers who had over 1,500 yards. Well, he's now taking his all-ACC production to Texas. What's back is Keenan Jackson and his 28 catches. What is new is Miami transfer JoJo Trader and Buffalo's Victor Snow. And the backfield belongs to Jaden Duke Scott, who ran for nearly 600 yards behind Smothers. So A lot of new faces, but some capable weapons in there for NC State. As far as Virginia is concerned, a little bit more structural than star-driven. I think that's deliberate. They lost a couple of quality ACC tackles, probably the best pair that Virginia's had in 20 years. And we'll see exactly how this team fares because they ran for 200 plus in 3 straight games last year down the stretch. Now, behind them, the Cavs have 6 running backs that the staff really believes in, with Middlebrook emerging kind of as the lead man in camp, and Notre Dame transfer Rico Flores, he's going to be out there on the perimeter at wide receiver. As far as the monsters in the trenches, you look at Virginia, they had the second best scoring defense in the ACC last year. So that was the reason why they were as good as they were. We can talk about the offense, the points scored, the way they ran it, all that. The defense was the key last year. And the headliner right now is Cam Robinson, who is a preseason first-team all-ACC linebacker and a real legitimate Defensive Player of the Year candidate in the ACC. He also has Maddox Marcellus right beside him. After that, there's not a ton of depth. But NC State's defense is the reason this team has kind of been stuck on 8 wins. 111th last year in the country in total defense. Now they're without a couple of tacklers that were really good, a couple of starting ends, but we'll see. They did go to the portal, and they got a couple guys that have played at a high level, like Popo Aguirre, who transfers in from Miami and is a real thumper with good range at the second level. They also brought in a transfer from Tulane as well. Now, the biggest availability question in the game is Cam Robinson. And as of Tuesday, he's a bit of a game time decision. He tore an ACL at Duke last November, and Tony Elliott says he's back at practice doing almost everything and is tracking ahead of schedule, though the Cavs want to be smart and his snaps could be limited. And here's why that matters more than just a normal injury, right? Robinson also missed last year's NC State game with a fractured collarbone, and CJ Bailey had a really nice performance in scoring 31 points against the Cavs, right? So NC State's version of an availability question is a bit of a legal one. Their nose guard, Katron Evans, had his NCAA waiver denied 24 hours before camp. He's suing, all this other stuff. So the date's been extended, and he is eligible for this football game. But what happens after this football game, no one really knows right now. So we'll find out. But either way, for the most part, decent bill of health for NC State. As far as strengths and weaknesses, Virginia's strengths are experienced. They are experienced. They have a quality tackle duo. And the weakness is about breaking in a brand new quarterback and breaking in a brand new wide receiver group. And the execution is the first thing that walks out the door when you have 40 plus new players, right? The biggest statistical mismatch is Virginia's run game against NC State's rebuilt front, because the Wolfpack did not fare very well last year on that side of the ball. So with a bunch of guys now gone, we'll see if it's different. So if Virginia runs for, say, 190 and controls the clock, well, Bailey's brilliance probably won't get enough possessions to really matter. But if NC State's new linebackers hold and this becomes a throwing contest, then the Wolfpack have the only real proven high-level quarterback right now in the stadium. So here are the questions that will determine it. Question 1, is Cam Robinson on the field? Now, this is a hinge of potentially the entire football game. And Elliott said it's a game-time decision right now. And him missing last year's meeting was significant because NC State scored 35 points in the process in victory. So even a limited version of him could change the entire outlook of the defense. Question 2, can Virginia run it the way it ran it down the stretch last year? Now, that 11-win season was built on 50+% third down conversions and controlled tempo. None of which is necessarily talent, all of which is execution. But 46 new players, a new starting quarterback that's never taken a snap in the stadium. So the line and the back six rotation kind of have to carry the identity until the rest catches up. Question 3, where does CJ Bailey throw it? Right? He threw for over 3,100 last year, which is pretty dang good. Well, that was a group that is now collecting NFL checks and is playing for Texas and Alabama and USC. But Keenan Jackson and his 28 catches, him being the leading returning receiver on the roster, means that JoJo Trader and Victor Snow, they're going to have to be answers rather than projects. Question number 4, does NC State's road problem show up again? The Wolfpack went 0-4 against the number as a road underdog last year. The only Power 4 team to fail that often in that spot, and they are 0-4 against the spread in their last 4 openers. Virginia is 6-1 against the number in its last 7 openers against unranked opponents. So the market has a long memory here, right? Question 5, can Bo Pribula avoid that one throw? 11 touchdowns last year, 9 interceptions. That's not the ratio you're looking for, and it wasn't great when he came back after the injured ankle. So in a ball control offense with a quality offensive line, his job is not to necessarily be spectacular. It's to avoid handing a really good quarterback on the other side of the short field. Question number 6, which rebuilt front 7 breaks first? Look, Aguirre and Dyson and the rebuilt defensive line have never taken a snap together. And Virginia's entire plan is to make them do it 40 times in a row now, right? So fourth quarter fatigue in game 1 is not cliche. It's the most reliably predictable thing about week 0 football. So every environmental factor in the matchup says Virginia. They're at home. You have an experienced roster, relatively speaking. You're 6-1 against the number in openers and a defense that was really solid last year in the ACC. Every quarterback factor says NC State. And week 0, I'll take the quarterback over the environment every time. Bailey is in year 3, the same coordinator. Pribula is in game 1 with the new one off a underwhelming season last year, throwing to a receiver group that's as new as his own, right? I'm going to take NC State in the upset here, 27-24. So give me the guy that has done it before and give me the points as well. Memphis at UNLV. This game is 10 o'clock Eastern time on Fox from Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas, Nevada. Now, this might be the best football game on the slate, and people are already calling it a playoff eliminator, which I'm all for, by the way. Every game should be a playoff game in the regular season, and UNLV is off a 10-4 season under Dan Mullen. They lost to Boise State in the Mountain West title game for the 3rd consecutive season, and Boise State now plays in the Pac-12. So does Colorado State, so does Fresno, so does San Diego State, so does Utah State. Now, Memphis is a different animal, and I mean that as far as they're a completely different team, right? Charles Huff arrives from Southern Miss, and he conducted one of the fastest teardowns in college football. He's got 70-plus new players, including 17 transfers from Hattiesburg alone. He's also got 3 new coordinators. So here's the number that tells the whole story. 26 Memphis players record at least 3 tackles last season, and 2 of them are still on the roster. Not 2 starters, I'm talking 2 players. So, very different Memphis team than what we've seen last season, that's for sure. As far as the quarterback is concerned, neither team has named one. And that's not a preview that the writers are dodging right now or the coaches are dodging. Dan Mullen actually announced on Monday that both Jackson Arnold, the transfer from Auburn, and Alex Orji, the former transfer from Michigan, both will play. And he would still not say which one takes the first snap. Now, his line on it is this. Everyone gets caught up on who's starting. But if we open in 5-wide set and then Jet Thomas is not the starter either, right? Does that really matter? Right? We know Jet Thomas is going to start at running back. So Charles Huff is doing the same thing, refusing to choose right now between Marcus Stokes and Aaron Noland until game time. So Jackson Arnold, he's on his 3rd school in 3 years. And if you know the storyline, you know the benchings, but the box score says that he does have over 3,200 career passing yards. He does have 22 touchdowns against just 8 interceptions. And at one point, he did throw 324 consecutive passes without an interception, which was the 3rd longest streak in the SEC. The problem with Jackson Arnold is he's tentative. He's got to cut it loose. He can't take the sacks. He took way too many last year at Auburn. Memphis, very unique quarterback room, right? It is. And I mean that as a compliment. Look, Marcus Stokes, he threw for nearly 3,300 yards and 30 touchdowns as a Harlan Hill finalist at D2 West Florida. And Aaron Nolan has backed up Julian Sayin and Lenora Sellers, 2 pretty good players at Ohio State and at South Carolina. However, he's just thrown 3 passes in his FBS career. So one has an enormous body of work against not great competition. The other has almost no body of work, but he played against some of the best teams and practiced against some of the best teams that you can possibly see. And the head coach not telling you who's running out the tunnel. So the weapons and UNLV's offensive identity is Jaden Thomas. And he is one of the more underappreciated backs probably in the country. He was top 6 last year in yards per carry among backs with 80-plus attempts. He averaged over 7.2 yards per carry. And he had 985 rushing yards in the regular season from a player that not a lot of people know about. And he runs behind a line that's anchored by all conference players across the front, right? They got really good quality pieces for sure. You have Dallin Hayden from Colorado, Tyshawn Chapman, who's in from after a pretty good career at Southern Miss. So they have quality pieces there. They really do. They have really, really quality pieces. Now, some monsters in the trenches. Now, Memphis's defense, not a rebuild. It's a bit of a relocation, right? Of the 17 Southern Miss players who transferred to follow Huff, 13 are defenders. 6 started at least 6 games last year. So that's a pretty good starting point. There is some continuity between head coach and what you're getting on the defensive side of the football. So we'll see. Will that be helpful as they move forward? Now, UNLV's answer is the most experienced part of its own roster. They have 4 returning starters in the secondary, led by Jake Pope, who came through Alabama and Georgia and put up 81 tackles last year. So there's not a ton right now, but we know that there's few quality pieces, especially in the back end for the Rebels. The injury report, not a lot. No one has really announced a significant injury issue on either roster heading into Saturday, which is a minor miracle, especially coming out of what's been a very physical fall camp. Some strengths for UNLV, the run game, the offensive line, and a secondary returning 4 starters. 3 things that travel pretty well when the quarterback situation is a bit unsettled. And the biggest mismatch might be UNLV's returning secondary against whichever quarterback Memphis decides to run out there as the starter. So if Memphis is throwing it on 3rd and 7 in the second half, and that is a matchup that could decide the game, and it is one that Huff could not fix with the transfer, right? So here's the questions that will determine the outcome. Question 1, who takes the first snap, and does either staff commit? Now, 2 teams playing 2 quarterbacks, not necessarily a plan. It's a bit of a coin flip with a few extra steps, right? Whichever staff commits first maybe gains the most, because rhythm is the only thing a new offense has going for it in week 1. Question 2, can Memphis's imported front tackle Jaden Thomas in space? Look, 7.2 a carry is not a scheme number. It's a broken tackle number. And he makes the first man miss with a lot of regularity. So Memphis's front 7 is experienced together, just it was somewhere else. And the gap fits are kind of the last thing that transfers will be able to maybe account for, right? So if they can hold them to, say, 4 yards a carry, then the Tigers could definitely win this game. Question 3, does UNLV's defense actually look different? Now, the whole referendum on the Mullen era, because 10 wins and 3 straight title game trips, says the offense has not been the problem. But if the Rebels win this with the 4th quarter stop rather than a shootout, that tells you more about their playoff case than maybe the final score does, right? Question 4, how does Marcus Stokes handle the jump? Look, he had 30 touchdowns and he was a Harlan Hill finalist. Means that he could play, right? He could play. He can throw it, he can lead, but there is a significant gap between what he's going to face in the Mountain West and what he's going to face in the Gulf South, right? And there's some returning starters that are going to be an adjustment, right? That Mountain West secondary has a lot of pieces back that he's going to be throwing it against. So we'll see how quickly the ball comes out of his hand on that first 3rd down. Question number 5, who wins the turnover battle in a game that could feature 4 different quarterbacks? Now, every signal caller here is relatively new to the building, new to the level or both, and new quarterbacks do occasionally give the football away. Now, Alex Orji's been around for a little bit. They're at UNLV, but with a total near 58 and this much uncertainty, the first team to hand over the short field is probably the one that's going to be on the losing end potentially. Question number 6, does a roster that met in January operate cleanly? I mean, more than 70 players on this Memphis roster are new. You have an entirely new staff, and it's their first road trip together. So watch out for pre-snap penalties. Watch out for blown alignments. That's what new rosters do in week 0. And they do it on the road at night with more regularity. And then question 7, what does a loss actually cost? Now, we already know that there's one spot that will go to the group of 6 champion. And Memphis will go play Boise State in a couple weeks. So the Tigers could be 0-2 potentially against their direct competition before the midway point of September. Meanwhile, UNLV's schedule, it offers fewer chances to really prove a lot, which makes this a very valuable game on their sheet when we could be valuing strength of schedule in the future. Look, I love the Memphis hire. I think Charles Huff's going to do a great job there. I really believe that. I just don't know if he can win this game in game number 1 on the road, 1,400 miles from home, a time shift that's an adjustment, and a roster that's so new, and a quarterback right now that we don't know who it's going to be. So UNLV has continuity that Memphis doesn't, and a running back who is the identity of the team. and a line that's built to impose that identity, and a secondary that has been around for a while. So I'm going to take UNLV to win the game 31-24. And I think Vegas is going to be very exciting watching this football team and maybe staying up late for them on a few occasions this fall. Okay, a couple brief previews. Jacksonville State at North Dakota State. This is live from the Fargo Dome. North Dakota State right now around a 6.5-point favorite. It's a genuine piece of college football history. I'm not going to let it pass unmentioned, right? North Dakota State, they were playing their first FBS game in program history. Think about that. A program that has 10 national championships in a 15-year span. They have 8 more titles at the D2 and the college division level before that. They have 49 NFL draft picks, and now they're playing Mountain West football. I mean, what more could you ask for, right? This is terrific. So you got Tim Polasek in year number 3, and the quarterback is Nathan Hayes, a fifth-year senior and a team captain who spent his career sitting behind Cam Miller and Cole Payton. Now he gets to take the first FBS snap that the program has ever had. So very exciting. Very, very exciting. And look, Jacksonville State is not a favorite, right? Charles Kelly's in year number 2. The Gamecocks have won 9 games in each of their 3 FBS seasons. They won a Conference USA title a couple years ago. So this is a quality football team. It is a quality football team that I'm looking forward to. So I'm looking forward to seeing how this all goes. I can't wait to see the Bison, their front, their defensive line, those guys up front, they all back. It's led by Keenan Wilson inside. So I want to see, hey, look, that's where the difference is, right? Between the FBS and the FCS, the biggest difference is along the line of scrimmage. Well, we know this for sure. North Dakota State has always been elite along the line of scrimmage. Can they sustain that elite level of play as they move up? But an exciting opportunity there. I actually think I'm taking North Dakota State in the game. I think they win that first one. Man, laying a bunch of points is going to be a little concerning. That's for sure. We also have Hawai'i at Stanford. This line right now is around 5.5. Stanford is favored. The total is around 49.5. So it's there in Palo Alto at 7 o'clock Eastern time on the ACC network. And a year ago, week 0 in Honolulu, Hawai'i beat Stanford 23-20 on a walk-off field goal. And that was the first win of a 9-4 season that ended with a Hawai'i Bowl title. And that's the program's first winning season since 2020 and their first bowl win in 5 years. And I'm telling you, their quarterback's real. I mean, he's legit. Micah Alejado is legitimate. He's a really, really good player. And he played the entire season last year with an injured right leg that he suffered in the first game against Stanford and had to sit out the spring to heal. And now he returned in fall camp fully healthy for the first time in 11 months. But it didn't compromise who he was. The guy threw for over 3,100 yards last year, had 24 touchdown passes. He had a 5-game stretch in which he threw 3 touchdown passes every single week. He was the freshman of the year in the Mountain West. And I'm telling you, he is the preseason. A lot of people pointed him as the preseason offensive player of the year in the Mountain West, which says a lot given he hadn't taken a snap since last year against Stanford at full strength. Now, Stanford's last 12 months, they're not quite as fun, right? They went 4-8, their third head coach, and however many seasons, and Tavita Pritchard, he's now running it. And he's been around for a while. So the central question around Stanford right now is, what does the personnel look like? There's a lot of new. There's a lot of question marks. And I can tell you this, I'm not laying nearly a touchdown with a program that has been favored 3 times in 3 years. So give me Hawai'i in the points for sure. We have one ranked team in action, and it'll be from the Coliseum. They're against San Jose State. It's the USC Trojans. So they're a 38.5-point favorite or whatever it is, right? They are 6-0 all time against San Jose State. And every one of those games has been significant. And San Jose State, not a great year last year. They went 3-9. It was their worst finish since 2018. And Ken Niumatalolo, he's in year 3. He's got a thin roster, kind of got emptied in the portal. But I am just really curious in watching this defense for SC. That's what you got to watch, because Lincoln Riley went out. He hired Gary Patterson. Gary Patterson spent 21 years building TCU into a program. He won multiple National Coach of the Year awards while doing it. And he's replacing D'Anton Lynn, who left for Penn State. But D'Anton Lynn kind of got the train on the tracks there at SC defensively. But this was Lincoln Riley's line at media days. He said that USC is more equipped than at any point in the last few years. And that's not a hope or a wish. That is significant. Now, a couple things to watch. Jakeem Stewart, maybe their best young defensive lineman. He's expected to miss this game after re-injuring his foot that bothered him most of last season. So it could be back as early as the Fresno State game, but him being out is significant. However, I want to see these young players. I want to see these young 5 stars who are going to matter an awful lot, whether it's the freshman edge, Luke Waffle, or the freshman tackle, Jermaine Winfield. This is the number 1 recruiting class in America. And a lot of these guys are going to be expected to play and play early. The other thing I'm fascinated by as well is they've said that the bodies look different for USC this year. They're bigger, they're stouter, they're more physical. That's significant. And I can't wait to see Jaden Mayavis supporting cast. Look, he threw for 3,700 yards last year, and he's back. But he's doing so without Mekhi Lemon and Jacoby Lane. But they did bring over Terrell Anderson from NC State. They have some young players that they're very excited about. And let's be real, have we ever really worried about Lincoln Riley replacing wide receivers? I know I sure haven't. USC will win comfortably, but you're not going to learn whether the defense is fixed. You only figure out what it looks like, which is a pretty good start. So I'll be watching that defense very closely. You also have the Florida State Seminoles, which will be going. That'll be 7 o'clock Eastern time on the CW from Doak Campbell Stadium. And they're a 31.5 point favorite, right? Maybe the most important 31.5 point favorite in America this weekend. And Mike Norvell is sitting there just above 500. It's not pretty right now in his first 6 years. They did win the ACC title back in 2023, but since that time, they're 7-18 and just 3-13 in league play. They went 2-10 and then 5-7. So a third straight disappointing year would not be good. That would not be good. And let's be real. They have SMU coming to Doak on Labor Day. And then they get Alabama in the non-conference. So by the third week of the season, you're going to figure out, all right, where is Florida State right now? And what does this mean for the long-term version of what Mike Norvell wants this group to be? Now, their answer at quarterback, I like Ashton Daniels. Now, it's their 4th different opening day start in the last 4 years. But they named him back in April as opposed to letting the competition run into the fall. So he's played a lot of football. He's been around, and he's very, very capable when running around. I really want to watch the run game. I want to watch Texas transfer Trey Wisner, who did miss a couple of preseason scrimmages, but it sounds like the running back room at Ohio State is one of the strengths of the team. I want to see the offensive line combinations. They're sorting out and still trying to figure out who their best 5 are. So that will be worth watching as well. I want to see the defense's carryover, because if you look at Tony White's unit, they've held opponents to 21 points a game over the back half of the season. And there are some new starters coming in, but the late trend was encouraging. I also want to watch the first drive. Not necessarily the first quarter, the first drive, because Mike Norvell is back in charge calling the plays. And he's going to try to invigorate this offense, but it was pretty good last year as well. So I think Florida State wins big, and the margin matters more than the result. They just need to play well and look clean doing it before SMU shows up the following week. That's it. Fast and clean all through the matchups. We got TCU, NC State, UNLV leaning towards North Dakota State, and I'll take Hawai'i in the points. I want to watch SC. I want to watch Florida State, but I'm not so concerned about the numbers in those two cases. Look, we gave you a bunch of picks. We gave you a bunch of leans, and the offseason finally comes to a close Saturday at noon. We can't wait. And if you've liked this show today, just wait till we have some better matchups. Wait till we have some bigger games, some bigger opportunities to break these teams down, because this is the level of detail that we're going to go into it with every single week. It's going to be a lot of fun. I think you guys will enjoy it. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you get the podcast. Check us out on the ESPN College Football YouTube page. And buckle up, ladies and gentlemen. College football is here. Welcome back, greatest sport in the world. So for all of us here at ACF, for Mark, Jake, Jack, the other Jack intern, Charlie, I'm Greg. We hope you have an amazing day. And remember, it's always college football. Hey guys, it's Greg McElroy. Thanks for watching Always College Football. Make sure you like, rate, and subscribe to ESPN's YouTube channel and wherever you listen to your podcasts.